resources which are abundant. There are many revenues which are emanating. The economy is growing. She doesn't see much trickle down of the benefits of development, and when the trickle down comes, it is not spatially and regionally equally distributed. She would like Repoa and other researchers to address the question, why are we failing on regional, spatial, sub-regional, sub-national, national equality, equity in the distribution of benefits of development? The third question she left us behind is that we have had, I think since 71, a policy of decentralization which has evolved over various phases, including current phase of D by D, decentralization by devolution. But she says she wonders whether this decentralization is helping the local to support and promote local development. And she asks us to question, discuss whether what are the binding constraints to this, and what are the possible areas of intervention which can be used to ensure that there is decentralization promotes local productivity and production through local institutions. The fourth question is about the informal sector. She raised it and said we should, if possible, discuss the role, contribution of the informal sector in the issues of productivity and production. And if we decide that their production is rather low, let us raise the question why, and also make suggestions on how to improve the situation. And finally, of course, she touched on the issue of youth. She said we have a lot of policies and a lot of pronouncements on integrating youth in development, but what does this entail? What can be done? What is being done to prepare the youth to be further integrated in the development process? That is our Vice President when she was almost closing. Then I'd like to refresh your mind, if you allow me, your minds and those who came late, what Professor Peter Nollinger pointed out. He said he touched on mainly three things: economic transformation, local development, and frugal innovation. And he wants us, as we discussed, to link the three and to see how the three can support each other. Then he went further and defined economic transformation, and he said economic transformation should be characterized by the following: preferably experimentation, state facilitation, the state playing the role of a facilitator, green transformation, and he defined it, shift from import. He took us through the cycle of policy transformation from import substitution to export-led growth, and he suggested that we also now should look at a new strategy of vertically specialized industrialization. But that is going to, I term that as globalization, basically. What you are saying is we should take from global, develop institutions that can support the local, and therefore we should blend globalization with the local development, and we can call it globalization. And he took us through what it requires. He said it requires a demand orientation. Then innovation, transformation should be demand oriented. Secondly, he said it must be consistent with the imperatives of current and emerging technologies, futuristic also. We should not only look at the current ones. Three, he said it should be needs-driven, driven by the needs of the local entities, local demands, and the local people, and local systems of power, production, and distribution. Fourth, he said it must be based on awareness of the internet, what he called the Internet of Things, what we have been called a web-driven economy, not service-driven only, web-driven economy. I think, Peter, I'm not distorting it. Then number five, you said it should be built and supported by capacity to tap knowledge, emerging knowledge, and also convert it to support the needs and demands of the local setting. And he also ended up by talking in extenso about what fragile innovation entails. I don't want to go too deep because it was very, very elaborate. And I would like now to, if is okay. If there is no other panelist who has come who has not yet spoken, I would like to first ask Peter to comment on the comments that were made by the panelists.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Pascal. That is half a surprise. So I will have to improvise a little bit, but that means that I have to practice what I preach, which is improvisation also in industrialization strategies. First of all, I think you gave a magnificent summary of my speech. I think it was only 4 minutes, so even better. Thank you very much for that. And I agree, globalization, demand-driven, needs-driven, etc. All very true. I think my esteemed colleague here was the one who used the phrase, LED is at the heart of development. And that is something that I would like to sort of take as maybe the starting point for a couple of comments to make. And like you also mentioned, that this trickle-down hasn't really worked for many people. So we need trickle-up. And trickle-up we could also frame as bottom-up initiatives where we actually start from practices, experiences, knowledges that are already there, and you try to strengthen them instead of bringing in something completely new. Now, the first thing that strikes me was also the very interesting comment on the communication and the role of the media. And of course, you are very right in saying that my parents, myself, we grew up with newspapers. My children don't read newspapers, they look on their phone. And sometimes this worries people like me because I think that these media are much less reliable, perhaps. But maybe that means that I'm getting outdated because I know that my children are very able to distinguish also between fake news and real news. Or at least, I hope they can. But the fact that this is an issue now, and I'm not saying that what was there in newspapers was always correct. There was also a margin of error in those days, obviously. But it does mean that those who surf the net looking for information need also develop the skills and the capabilities to distinguish more fake from less fake, from more real to really real. And these are the kinds of capabilities that are very important in developing also the capabilities for adaptive technological learning on which this frugal innovation needs to be built. And that reminds me of an anecdote that I would like to share with you, which is about solar mini-grids, electricity provision as compared to electricity from the grid. In a recent study that we did in Uganda, there were a number of villages who were not connected to the national grid, and there were some NGOs who had developed local solar power-based mini-grids. And they interviewed people in the village, expecting that they would be very happy with now having access to electricity. However, one quite vocal, strong lady said, no, I'm not happy with this at all. And the interviewers were a little bit surprised, so they asked her, well, why is this? And she said, this is fake electricity. Now, why did she say that? Because they asked her, how do you mean this is fake? It sort of loads your phone, you can watch television, your refrigerator may work. And she said, no, but I want the electricity that rich people in the city get. And that comes from the grid, not these sort of makeshift solar systems. Now this, in my experience, is an important hurdle with the acceptance of these kinds of frugal innovation solutions. Because many people might feel that they are given a sort of second best solution that is only for relatively poorer people, while the rich people actually get the grid. Now, in some cases, when I did my studies in India, solar panel systems were more reliable than the grid. So it also depends on where you are. in the world, but it raises the point, and I think that was also shown through in the discussions around the banking and the role of the private sector. These kinds of innovations are not meant to replace larger scale government-funded infrastructures. Yeah, they are meant to connect. And one of the real challenges, therefore, is in countries like in Tanzania that you can connect these solar systems to the grid and vice versa, because they have overcapacity at different moments in time, for example. Now, this is tricky, especially because many of the people working for these public utilities, they don't want to deal with these sort of local home systems. They feel that that is not within their mandate, so to speak. So there is a mind shift needed there to change thinking on that. Then I think I wanted to pick out one other thing that is about the banking. And you said very elegantly in your contribution that banks did not panic, they actually started to collaborate. And then you indeed, I think rightly so, also in my experience, you said if you can't beat them, you join them. The simple fact that the banking sector had to come to the conclusion that they can't beat the telecoms when it comes to financial services, but that they would have to join hands, I think is a signal of a fundamental change in the economy. Not necessarily always for the good, because it is not for nothing that the banking sector has to deal with many regulations, because people are very worried about money always, for good reasons. But telecoms have very fewer regulations that they have to deal with. So if the banking sector and the telecom sector are teaming up, what does that mean in terms of regulatory systems? I don't have the answer for that, but I think these are the sorts of challenges that we should be thinking about more and that we can discuss also in a more critical fashion, perhaps. So I look forward to more questions and discussion. Thank you very much.
Join the high table if it's okay with you. I would like now to suggest that we open the discussion to the floor. We, according to my watch now, it is 5 minutes to 12. And we have on the timetable until 5 minutes to 1. So I will request the ushers to go around with the mics and try to make sure they reach people in time. I've talked to them already, and I hope they are moving. Because we have 1 hour, and in 1 hour we can talk a lot, but please let us try to make our interventions short, because at the end, I'm going to reserve 15 minutes to the panelists to give final comments, and a few minutes to Peter to give his final comments. I'd like to start with the person in the middle there. Mike, people, please move fast. I think you should distribute yourself according to rows. One of you should stand on the other side, and you have about 3 mics. You have to stand in each of the rows, and you keep your eyes moving so that you can move fast, otherwise we lose time. Yes, sir. The person inspects. Yes.
Thank you very much. Local economic development is totally different from what we have been talking about, small-scale industries or even livelihood development. This is totally different because we are looking at the micro resource, micro funding, micro knowledge, micro profit, and micro space. So what was happening is that if you remember many years ago, you see, we used to promote this type of industry. We had a CEDO, we had TIDO, we had everything. and they were promoting in the villages, and slowly they died off. One important thing is that Tanzania is not a uniform country. There are highly developed where it can absorb certain level of technology. There are others, very underdeveloped area, which cannot afford to absorb developed technology. And that's why I say that, for example, if every region puts up its own brochure on types of investment and all those things, people will benefit out of it. One of the ways of putting up these industries at the local level is tax incentives. Developed country might have low tax incentives. Underdeveloped area might have high tax incentives so that people can afford to put up. And then there are micro level where we should not even touch them. The TRA or someone should not charge it because they don't have a profit enough to share between themselves and the tax authorities. So if we want to develop a small areas which are going into the waste, small resources, then there is this local economic development. Most important thing is that we as an economist, we think of higher GDP for the country, but we also think of equitable distribution of income among the countries. And if we want to create an equitable distribution, then this is the local economic development, which is very important for a country like Tanzania to come up. Most important thing is also that when they are producing things, the Tanzania Bureau of Standards and those things, because I've worked in rural area, they should not come and disturb them because they should have two different standards. Once we export for Europe and high market, they should have their own standards. Then those small people who are producing at a very low level, they should not have such a high standard, otherwise they cannot afford it. If we can change our policy to what was happening before, you see, you can develop, you can produce something at your own house, in your own doorsteps. Today they will question you as is this your shop? No. Then find a place to, they cannot afford to have a shop, they cannot afford to have it. But they have the ability to produce things. If they have the ability, if the resources are wasted, why not? Let them produce. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Can you please tell us your name and your institution before you finish?
Dr. Ramesh Shah. I've been a consultant. Most of the time I've been working for United Nations in different countries on industrialization strategy. Thank you.
There was a hand before.
Nikiongea Kiswahili, am I okay? Nimekaa vizuri? Mnasikia sio? Maana mimi mzee sana. Saa hii
I'm not sure if translation is continuing. Let us ask the organizers first.
Okay,
Otherwise,
you want Swahili or English?
English, if possible.
L'anglais.
Because Peter doesn't speak Swahili.
L'anglais ou l'allemand?
Okay, sir.
Vous voulez l'anglais ou l'allemand? Le français?
Anglais seulement.
Anglais. Okay. Today's subject is really excellent. Last time, you remember, we are looking for strategies for developing the underdeveloped, the grassroots. So this time, REPO has come with that subject of how to develop the local economies, the local people, the local governments. Now the government, I am Damas Dandi. I belong to Building Africa NGO. Although I'm also a member of REPO. REPO is the one who gave me all the akili I have, all the intelligence I have. Anyway, in Building Africa, we have brought up two things. Last time I told the report that the only way to develop the South, the grassroots communities, number one is decentralization, which is going on. It can be carried by the government. I'm going very fast. Then decentralization from from regional, district, villages, all this up to household level. At household level, you know also people are very poor, even at household levels. Then, the best thing I told the report last time, to reach the local communities is by seminars, through seminars. So they should educate people or teachers for developing the local areas. Because once you go to visit the local areas, you go there, you hold a seminar, you hold a meeting called the Kolia meeting places. You give them what you want to tell them by way of seminars. Because you go there and write and use your modern, whatever you call, modern what? Modern functions or modern machines, you'll never reach them. So I think seminars will make us reach them. So, and we cannot make any progress without this decentralization and finding ways of reaching these locals. Tunawabeba. Local people are called people to beba, Bebana program. You beba them, you put them on your back and they come up. You cannot just say you are reaching them. You cannot reach them on parallel lines. They have to be carried, or bebana, or bebwa, or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Charles Kimei. I don't work. I work at home, so literally I'm still resting. I have a few comments. One, and I will be very straight to the point. One is that we are trying to create economic activity at the local level. This is the economic development. We know that the government has done a lot in terms of infrastructure and social services. So now what we should discuss is how do we bring private sector into the equation so that they can exploit the resources that the government has invested in these communities by creating jobs, by creating businesses to employ the locals in those areas. And I think that anything starts with an idea. You don't start with technology, you start with an idea, and these days if you have an idea, you float it even in the internet, you get the solution, a very innovative solution from all over the world. You can get one from Ghana, from Zimbabwe, from Kenya, and they will tell you where to get the bits and coins to put together that solution. And so it's something which needs to be institutionalized somehow. And Professor Peter says that we don't have to have innovation hubs. But you see, innovation is expensive. If you do it at the local level, first of all, those people, the localities all over, so that the people can imitate, because imitation makes life easier. I don't have to invent the wheel each and every time. And the other issue is the issue of, if you are developing in a locality, the issue of spread of entrepreneurial talent is very, very different. If you go to some places, even when they have money, they don't think about investing. They think about drinking better. But in some localities, if they get a cent, they want to save it, and they will innovate. They will have an idea to invest somewhere. So again, we need somehow to institutionalize these issues so that we can have a way of driving, if it's innovative solutions to people's needs, people's demands at the village level, etc., then they are done. But I think that we must work for innovation for all. If innovation is done in one locality, it should be able to be rolled out to another locality by marketing it out nationally and even possibly globally, so that then the cost of innovation is shared amongst many other producers. But the last thing I want to say is that one of the things that the local governments are not doing, we are talking about easiness of doing business, and every time the National Business Council meets, There are plenty of issues. Some of the issues really are relating to the local, these local councils. Because I started a query somewhere there, in Msata there. When we went there, we got the license, but when you go there, you're told, now you have to pay compensation, now you have to do that, now you have to pay. You pay so much more than the investment you want to put into the place before you even start. So how do we really impart, incentivize investment when the local authorities really are not in keeping? Of course, not everywhere, I think, but I think in a lot of places there are many things that come, levies, there are taxes that are not open. You cannot read them in the courts, whatever, which means that you are going to invest when you are very much blind. And so people just shy off from investing at a very local level. They invest in towns because you know what you are going to do, and you know more businesses that trade in here and there, but it's very difficult to do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I think some of those questions you have raised, Mr. Mwanri, Honorable Mwanri, will help to answer them.
Asante Mwenyekiti. I also would like to take this opportunity. I'm the Regional Commissioner for Tabora, that person has just talked about. And I commend the presenters. They've done a wonderful job. And of course, secondly, and equally effective to mention here, is that we commend Repoa's efforts. When I was defending my master's thesis, the external examiners told me and asked me, now, Mr. Mwanri, could you be kind enough to tell us what is that we did not know, that we can know from you today? So I was sweating, you see, trying to defend myself and think of what I'll be talking about, you see. And Repoa, today when we come here, we are looking for that thing. What is that we did not know, that we can know from you? And you have been very elaborate in that. And of course, we had the vice president here who has done quite a commendable job. You see, the thing is, in Tanzania, we have quite a number of literature, we have quite a number of research work, and yet we put them in our wardrobes and just keep them there and we don't work on them. I'm going to be concrete. To be concrete is to say Tabora, is to say Sikonge, Agri Mwanri. That is being concrete. You see, I want to be concrete. You see, if you are thinking of, let's say you are talking about palm oil, or you're talking about tikiti, or you're talking about tomato, there are places in Tabora, if I go there and tell them that you have to do more job to see to it, you produce some more tomato, they'll laugh at me and say, you man, this man is leading us, he doesn't know what he's talking about. We have heaps and heaps here. And we're looking for someone to purchase them, and he's nowhere to be seen. Why? Because, one, you have to make sure that you have to take your tomato from Sikonge to Tabora. And if your rural roads are not good enough, you can be sure that you'll be saying quite a number of things which sound intelligent, but irrelevant. You see? So one has to be very careful. And that's why I commend those guys who talked about the idea of affordable technology. You go to Muhuridede. I'm coming from Tabora. In Uyui, for those people who come from Uyui, in Muhuridede. And then you want to put a computer system there. Or I'm coming from Tura. Or you want to put a coherent computer system over there. You can be sure those guys, the local people are just going to laugh at you and say, this is impossible, irrelevant. And that's why I think that's why we are here today. At least to say that thing that you people as well did not know, that you can know from us. Mao Zedong put it very clearly. If we want to solve a problem, resolve the primary contradiction first. The second one will go automatically. We are talking about political economy here. Political economy is not politics and economics put together. Political economy is all about relations of production. What is the central contradiction that you got in London? The contradiction there was between labor and the capital. What is the contradiction that is inherent in most developing countries? The contradiction in most developing countries, including Tanzania, is between the level of the productive forces and labor. If you have people growing tomato or maize, and they throw that maize just like that and say we shall meet during the harvesting system and this kind of a thing, you can be sure that we'll get nothing. So the primary contradiction there is all about the level of the productive forces. And if you're talking about the idea of introducing a tractor in that locality, in that local area, then you must know also what has the villager gone. If they're coming from a hand hoe, you could think of oxen and plows and all this kind of a thing instead of thinking of a tractor. Ngoja nikwambie Mtanzania unanisikiliza. Ukiruka hapa kutoka kwenye jembe la mkono unarukia kwenye tractor, itakuwa irrelevant tu. Unashangaa, this man. Unaona? And here we are talking about the industrial development. We have His Excellency, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, a very dynamic president who says we should be coming from a low-income economy going to a higher income economy, whereby industrialization is the key driving force. How do you go about that? I was in Nzega, and we have, I'm finishing, just a minute, I'm finishing. And you know, most of these guys who talk to you are not being told to do it, but now we're talking about. Namalizia. Let me forget about that one, because now it seems I'm lecturing. You see, this is my problem now. You have your people. Wewe unazungumza ibara ya 145 ya katiba inayo hiyo. Ibara ya 146 inatambua local government. Unataka watu wako wale chakula. Unataka watu wako wavae nguo. Unataka watu wako wafike mahali waweze kuwa na shelter. Ngoja nikwambie Mama Mary na ku problem tulionayo. Unaweza ukafika pale kwangu mita bora. Ukaambia uchumi. There is one thing that we are talking about here. We are addressing the question of that, whereas you're talking about economic growth, you should be in a position to tell it. Ours is 7%. Because now he's telling me that I should go quick. And people will say, you see, how many people are eating meat here? I said, a few number of them. How many people are boarding buses here? A few number of them. And then you come to a situation whereby when you say there is economic growth here, people say, well, but we don't see how it goes about that. Then you go to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton talks about trickling down policies. There must be a one-to-one function between the economic growth and the economic development. One should be able, if you're producing here and the economy has grown up, the local people around there would like to see that one-to-one function. And that's why we're talking about hospitals. That's why we're talking about schools. That's why we're talking about rural electrification and so on and so forth. Now, what would be the problem? If we are going to local elections and then you have a bogus chairman over there, all these things we are talking about ni bure, haitasaidia. Kwa sisi tukitoka hapa tukienda kule Tabora, liko kola de vote, huo umetusaidia sana. Tunakwenda pale tunamkuta mwenyekiti wa kijiji. Anatoka na kamasi. Uwe na hakika kwamba kijiji chote kitakuwa kinatoka na kamasi. Kwa hiyo sisi tunapozungumza habari ya economic development hapa, get some key people katika local areas, waliko mwenyekiti wa kitongoji, mwenyekiti wa kijiji, mtendaji wa kata, ambaye yuko focused, ambaye atasimamia haya maendeleo tunayozungumza hapa, utapata haya matokeo unayotaka kuyapata hapa. Lakini kama unakwenda pale watu hawajui mbele, wamekaa pale wanakaa tu wanasubiri, watabaki wanalalamika tu. Na wakibaki wanalalamika maana yake ni nini? Wamejidisqualify katika swala zima la kufikiri. Mkuu wa mkoa tunaomba ufikiri kwa niaba yetu. Sisi hatuwezi kufikiri. Ndicho kitu tunachozungumza hapa. Kwa hiyo tunapokwenda katika local areas kule, sisi tumepeleka pale wakuu wa wilaya mlioko hapa mnafahamu tulichofanya. Tumesema also 10% itengwe. 4% kwa ajili ya vijana, 4% kwa ajili ya women, 2% for the handicapped. Tumeiweka pale na tunasimamia, and it is embedded in the law kwamba you have to provide for that. Lakini ukienda pale ukikuta watu bogus pale, zitaliwa tu zile hela zitaondoka pale zimekwenda. Kwa hiyo kuna haja ya kutiririsha D by D, decentralization by devolution. was meant to eat. Kwamba whereas you were making decisions in Dar es Salaam and Dodoma, this time we should be making decisions in Tabora, Sikonge, Uyui, and all this kind of a thing. Lakini lazima itengenezwe hiyo structure ifanye kazi pale. Kwa hiyo sisi tunapokuja hapa, mwenyekiti, namalizia mzee wangu, kwa sababu mimi nikiketi nitakuwa nimemaliza. Ni vizuri tukiondoka humu ndani tukajua tunazungumza mazingira ya namna gani kule tunakotoka. Moja ni swala la leadership ambalo tunataka tufanye sasa, tuhakikishe kwamba tunapokwenda katika local elections lazima watu wetu wafundishwe. Hata kama unasema wakina mama wachaguliwe, tunataka achaguliwe mama ambaye kichwa kinatwanga. Hata kama ni mwenyekiti anakwenda pale, tunataka mwenyekiti ambaye kichwa kinatwanga pale. Ukiwapata hawa watu katika focal areas, watasimamia haya mabadiliko tunayotaka kuwapata na kuhakikisha kwamba wanatuvusha, wanatupeleka. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, nakushukuru sana.
I'm sorry. My body language was a little bit harassing for you, but I'm very happy that you managed. I'm going to go around, and please be assured that if you can't talk this morning, there is also a session in the afternoon. Professor Mbilinyi, I'm coming that way. Professor Mbilinyi.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to congratulate all of those who have spoken before, especially in the morning. Is it coming across? I'm hearing? Okay, thank you very much. And I was especially encouraged by the panelists, the discussants talking increasingly about the need for participation at local level. What I want to raise is the need to realize or to bring out more the fact that our local communities are not homogeneous. They are structured in terms of power relations, in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of class. And right now, and as we know, especially when we're talking about indigenous knowledge, we know that there's a whole body of indigenous knowledge in the hands of women because of the gender division of labor and the ways in which they have a particular role to play. If it's agriculture in terms of cultivation, in livestock keeping, processing of foodstuffs, and so on and so on. At the moment, at this time, there's also fierce struggles at the local level over control of land, over control of other productive resources, and the control of labor. And partly because of the patriarchal systems of production, where women and youth were extremely important in providing unpaid labor, not just in care economy, but in actual production for the market, and so on and so on. And this has been augmented by growing large-scale investment, which is also drawing off a lot of the land and other resources for the large-scale investors, some of whom are local, meaning Tanzanian, and some are outside. Sasa, how do we incorporate this kind of analysis? And also, I hear sometimes the language about we have to go reach out or teach the local community. If we also recognize the agency within that community, and especially the agency, the capacity to organize themselves of those local marginalized groups, especially I'm talking about women and youth and people with disability. Sasa, at the local government level, it is also not a neutral kind of a government process. There are fierce struggles when young people or women are, for example, involved with social accountability, the following the money, as many are doing as a part of programs going on in participatory budgeting. And they raise questions about how resources are being used as they reach the school, as they reach the local dispensary, and so on. Local government authorities are threatened. They are not used in the old patriarchal system to having young people raise questions, auxilio, or women raising questions, and young people get locked up because of raising questions. So I would suggest that this process, as the previous speaker talked about political economy, is not conflict-free. So how do we incorporate into our analysis of promoting innovation, the recognition innovation is also coming at cost for some actors? How do we empower those who are the actual producers to increase their control, their involvement in decision-making, and their capacity to actually benefit from the so-called local economic development we are talking about? Asante-san.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Dalali Peter Kafumu, an MP from Igunga, and my regional commissioner is here. My views is that this local economic development cannot happen if we cannot implement the government policy which started in the 1970s of decentralization. We should decentralize everything to the local level. And as the RC said, in the law it is embedded. We should increase decentralization. We had even the decentralization by devolution. We have to devolve everything to the local level. If we don't do this, this jargon, local economic development, the economists are using, is not going to happen. So when you decentralize, it means you give the local capacities to the local people. The government, the local government has to be encouraged, has to be helped to be independent. You go to the local government, to the local serikali za mitaa, madiwani and the wabunge, and also the local staffs in government. We should give them the capacity to understand and to manage things there. Otherwise, the government, if it is not given the capacity to manage the economy at that local level, we can't do anything. The RC said we have to have a chairman who can see things. Lazima tuwe na kiongozi, tuwe mwenyekiti, katibu ambaye anaona, sio mtu asiye na uwezo. So the government has to make sure these people have the energy, have the technology, has the capacity to lead. So you make the government able to lead, but also the local entrepreneurs. I'm talking about the sector binafsi. In English we say private sector. If you are speaking two languages, sometimes you forget the other words. So the private sector at the local level has to also to be incentivized to understand things without giving the technologies and the understanding of investment, of holding the investors. You have to have local investors, local technicians. All those things have to happen at that level. Without doing that, we will sing this song for a long time. So when you have these people who are able to do things by themselves, the government, also the local private sector, and then you can talk about innovation. Without people who can use this innovation, you can't. In Igunga, we have a project called Igunga Eco Village. This is a project funded by people from, I think, from Holland. And also there are many organizations who are funding. They are trying to bring innovations, technologies which are suitable for the people of Igunga. It is a semi-arid area, so they are teaching us to harvest rainfall. From every building, you harvest that rainwater, and it is working. So what I'm saying, my points are, make the people in government at the local level, give them the capacity to talk about local economic development, but also the private sector at the local level, the government has to make sure that these have also the capacity, and then you can innovate. Asante-san.
Thank you very much. Can I come back here? Then I go that side, and then come back this side. Madam.
Good afternoon. My name is Zainab Abdallah. I'm the District Commissioner of Pangani, Tanga region. I happen to be the youngest DC in the country. I was appointed when I was 23. Right now, I'm 26. So I would like to represent voices of young people in here today. So I'm going to speak about unpacking potentials for young people in order to accelerate local economic development. As we all know that half of the world's population is composed of young people. And here in Tanzania, 60% of the population is composed of young people. So if we speak of local economic development without talking about fostering development for young people, then we cannot accelerate that kind of development. So has not set priorities of changing mindsets of these young people. If you come across all regions, we need to impose skills to young people. You see the vocational training centers. When you come to each region, you'll find vocational training centers. But when you come deep to the district, to the local government authorities, there are very few training centers, the vocational training centers. So you see most of the young people don't have any skills to employ themselves, to enter into entrepreneurship programs. And in the end, development is lagging behind at a local level. So what I would suggest is that we need vocational training centers in the local level, but in turn, in order to acquire at least half of the young people who are unemployed, we need the industrialization in place. Because I believe through industrialization, most of the young people will have jobs, but they won't have if we don't have skills. But if we have industries in place, that means we need the PPP in place, the public-private partnership. So the private sector, we need investors in place, we need the policies in place, and fortunately, the government has already put infrastructure in place. So if we all have the PPP in place, we are assured that these young people will have jobs in the industries, but without raw materials, we cannot have these industries that we are talking about. So, unfortunately, the mindset of many young people here is that they need white-collar jobs. They don't want to go to the agricultural sector. They don't want to farm. But unfortunately, when you come across the richest people in Tanzania, you find they have invested in the agricultural sector. So we need to change the mindsets of young people so that they can go to the agricultural sector, so that the local government authorities can help them acquire land, so that the financial institutions can put considerable loans to young people, so that even the local government can help them write up projects that make them acquire the 4% that we are speaking about, 4% of young people, 4% of women, and the 2% of the disabled community. So if we have all people, if they are on board, I think the economic development will accelerate at a higher level. But if we don't put young people in the decision-making process, we cannot acquire such kind of things. Because I was taking a look at my local government council, the council. If you take a look at the councillors, 90% are older people. I'm not saying that old people cannot advocate for changes, but what I'm saying is we need to put young people on board. Because the nature of young people, they want to see changes, they are flexible, they're creative, as Professor Peter has said, they are flexible in adapting to changes of the environment. So if we have most of them on board, it means we are going to speak the same language. In fact, their challenges, they are going to address them because they know their challenges on the ground. So if we don't do that, we end up in a place that young people don't add value to where they're coming from. Young people do not engage in different economic activities taking place in their areas, and the room for creativity won't take place because, as you said, Tanzania has so many potentials, so many potentials. In Pangani, we have Indian Ocean across the whole district. We also have the River Pangani, but you cannot imagine. They cannot even farm tomatoes. They're taking them from Lushoto. So you are surprised, like, what are you doing here? If you take a look at the fishing industry, you'll be surprised. If a person fishes more, what he does, he adds more wives. So that is the productivity of what he or she is doing. So we have to move to another level. We have to change mindsets of these young people so that when we speak about local economic development, they are also aware of what is trending and what the world is actually looking at them. Thank you.
Thank you. In the middle, I'm coming. I'm trying to do some spatial equity in terms of contributions from each side.
My name is Linda Helgesson Sakay. I'm the country director for NIRAS Tanzania. I just wanted to share one lessons learned that we have from Kigoma. There's a program called Local Investment Climate, and it's run by PORALG, together with TNBC, TPSF, ALAT, TCCIA, together with the regions of Dodoma and Kigoma, and all the local government authorities in Dodoma and Kigoma. And what this program is trying to do is to promote public-private dialogue on the local level by promoting district business councils and regional business councils. There are also now one-stop business centers in each district where business men and women can come and get support on all the issues that you need in terms of business registration, TRA, TFDA, and so on. But the program is also supporting government infrastructure for business climate promotion. And I just wanted to give one example from Kigoma, where the local government authority has a fish landing site, employing a lot of people, so what has happened is that the local government authority, through funding from the program, has actually invested a lot in upgrading this facility. And there is a special purpose vehicle in place, which is a PPP on the local level. So it's basically a board consisting of the local government authority, the Fishermen and Women Association, the program itself, and a few other stakeholders in the community. And the revenue then that is generated from the fish landing site is actually shared between the facility itself and the local government authority. So it has become actually a very important revenue source for the local government authority. Now, in relation to this fish market, there are women who are drying daga, sardines, so they are benefiting. There are ice-making machines, so that is also increasing the revenue. The young people are also engaged in an adjacent market, so where they have started a restaurant and also engaging in fish farming. So I think we can look at the local level, looking at particular value chains, and looking at this as an ecosystem where everybody kind of plays a part and it's benefiting everybody. So that's just one example from Kigoma.
Upcoming question. Yes, at the end. And then you are next.
My name is Helmut Mrema. I'm associated with the Kilimo Biashara Kinalipa TV program being aired at the TBC on Friday at 7, and it will be on Azam on Saturdays at 8, and Star TV at 7. I think we are missing a very critical point here about what is the really main challenge that we have in hand. To me, and my experience is that the real challenge we have in hand is fear. The fear which is caused by lack of adequate, sustainable, and predictable income. And this fear does not select. It's not with the rich, the middle level, or the lower level. Everybody has that fear. And that's why we are acting or behaving in this manner. So, what is the solution? I think value chains development and management offer us a very, very useful tool that if we use it and empower, make the farmers rich by making sure that we work with them, they produce, they process, and they market value-added products branded in their own name, it will give us a huge opportunity, once, to commercialize the whole economic processes and create opportunities for private sector to really make money by making small-scale farmers rich. We think a little bit outside the box. Stop about me. Let's talk about we. How can we make others rich so that from them we can do more businesses together? And this requires a change of mindset, perceptions, and attitude that we have been using for all this long, because it seems that the School of Economics that we are going through has failed to deliver what we want to achieve. So I'm encouraging people to walk our chain. We follow our programs. We have already started, and we are going to make a huge change in this country within a very short period of time because of properly using value chains that will make this small-scale farmer, a quarter-acre holder, become rich by making sure that we increase productivity, production, quality, and the value captured out there, it is distributed equitably to all actors according to their contribution. Thank you so much.
His neighbor.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Dre. I'm an economist at DFID. And I just wanted a very quick question, which was to reflect back on this idea that some of these technologies in this fourth industrial revolution enable a lot of very local level innovation and for things to filter upwards. But a lot of those innovations it seems to me at least, are about the use of a network, the use of a utility which provides information. And I see in a lot of these discussions that seems to merge a description of how do we provide this network that provides innovation with what do we then use it for. And I'm not sure in previous industrial revolutions, I don't know how many discussions there were about the provision of electricity, for example, and all the machinery that we could make that use electricity. And so that seems to me that maybe there is a role there for the government in ensuring that there is sufficient connectivity and sufficient capacity of that information to really facilitate all of these things which ultimately involve the lowering of transaction costs. And in doing that, are there things that the government should focus on in trying to do that? And equally, are there things that the government should definitely avoid doing when trying to do that?
The person at the back.
Thank you all presenters. I've been impressed with the comment from other presenters. Also comment from Honorable District Commissioner from Tanga. My name is Alessandro Tefram, the President of Dar es Salaam University Economics Association, also working as executive at Africa Moja Youth Society. My biggest concern is how youth have been engaged in local economic development. I'm convinced now that community is beyond its ability. The quality of local leaders also determine the quality of local leaders determine the quality of local economic development. As you can see, most of them have never trusted us as youth, but they have trusted us our votes and not our abilities. Sadly enough, even our parents have been selling cattle and all assets from our homes to send us to school, but they have not also trusted the education they're getting from school. So even our ideas at the local level have not been listened enough. All these brains are not from Dar es Salaam. Most of us here are from the region, maybe Arusha and other places, where if we could be using our brains at the local level, we could have developed our communities. But because as youth we have not got that chance to participate in local government, local economic development at the local level, we have not been put our energy enough in developing the communities. So I call for the positive engagement of youth at the local level, from the local leaders, but also from our parents. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Julius Gatune. I'm with the Africa Center for Economic Transformation based in Ghana. I'm also working with Maastricht School of Management. My question, or maybe a comment, is really the issue that was raised on fourth industrial revolution and what it means for local development. Because as you know, the fourth industrial revolution is actually a major concern. Every country in the world now is worried about the future of jobs. Because as you know now, machines can do almost everything. The other day they had a machine that was debating in a debate of experts, and it did quite well without being given anything. A lot of can be processed. So a lot of work that we thought, before initially we were talking about automation, thinking of routine jobs. But now even what we thought was intelligence and domain of human being has been encroached, and machines can actually do it. We can now, you have seen autonomous driving taking place already. The cars are being tested, which will be driving themselves. Jobs of drivers will be gone. And together with that, other things are happening. For example, I think the district commissioner raised about the issue of agriculture and youth and so on. Youth is a problem. We want them to go to agriculture. But as you know also, agriculture is being captured by a few people in the urban areas, capturing all the land. So really, the options are becoming less, but also it's also creating a different environment. Because when you think of a fourth industrial revolution with all these platform economies, first of all, the taxi driver who sits here and thinking that they are competing with the other driver, he should know the competitor is actually sitting in California. That's the person that you should worry about. But the platform also provides you different opportunities, because as you go in the West, they are going towards where they talk of gig economies, where you do one small jobs, which is the reality of Africa, because people do all these informal works. But those platforms are also now providing opportunity for you to get more work. And what Professor Peter raised was about the whole idea of 3D printing, because it's actually going to bring a very huge paradigm shift. Because if you can make your own things in a community center, then why do you need the world? And this is already happening. And with time, you can almost get any design that you want on the internet, which means that at a local level, you can really start thinking differently, almost reorganizing society. So actually, we may be able to do Jamai once again in a different way, because you now have technologies that if you think carefully about them, you can actually do quite a lot. They are bringing threats, but also they are bringing different ways of organizing yourself. And what we really need to think, not technology innovations, because they are those already the basic, is how do you do social innovations, and also innovations in political economy, I think that were addressed, so that now you can see how do we now take this fourth industrial revolution and become aware, because you can now build local economies almost, because you have everything that you need. So it's a comment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dr. Nagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I need to really thank REPOA for inviting the members of parliament to this meeting, because they represent the voices of people. I'm very much impressed by the topic this year, local economic development and packaging potential for accelerated transformation of Tanzania. This is a very relevant topic at this time. And we have already learned a lot, that without the participation of the people, and you know the people are in the local areas, in the villages and in sub-villages. So without their involvement, it is very possible even the development may not be relevant to them, but even without them participating in development, there will be no development. So that is why I'm really very grateful to be in this meeting. And my choice in the morning was not to say anything in this meeting, to listen more. But I want to talk about two issues, and very briefly, that what we are missing here, and I'm sure this is a research institution. There are a lot of researchers which have been done, but they are in the shelves and they are not sent to people. Let us do that, because people then from the researches and the findings will be doing something that is certain, rather than really doing something and trying without being sure what will come next. But the other thing, the other challenge, is the lack of capital in the local areas. You want them to participate. How will they participate? They are already participating in social development, using their strength and collecting what you call sons and to build the schools and to build the health centers. Economic development, any economic activity, be it agriculture, be it industry, be it commerce, it requires a bit of capital. And I'm very happy for the government to have passed it as a law. We initiated in the 90s that we need to allocate some money for women. Now it is for women, youth, and the disabled. That is not enough. That is very little. But let us do the research and know where the local people can get the capital so that they can also participate and the expertise that is required. There is a belief that in the villages, what is required is agriculture, and not for commerce, but for subsistence. That mindset has got to change as well. There is also another belief that industry is only for the urban areas, not in the villages. Let us have mind changes for that also. There are so many things that we need to change our minds on, and that will come from research, but not for the shelves, but for devolving it to the people. The other thing is, in the beginning of our independence, we had extension of power to the people. And in the 70s, of course, we changed to devolution of power to the people. Extension, of course, means you are just instructing the people, and it was based on planned economy rather than market economy. The market now will be the people. What would they want? If they want something, they will be able to participate. But if you bring issues that are not wanted by the people, they may not participate, even if we are there as members of parliament and councillors to mobilize them. If they don't need what you want to introduce, they may not participate. So I'm very grateful for us to have been here, and I'm sure from here we'll be able also to utilize our research findings and to send them to the people so that we get their participation. I thank all of you because all of you have presented something that is very relevant to us for this meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. There is always the danger that when it comes close to closure, more hands come up. And I'm already beginning to see that I'm losing friends. So I'll have to change my strategy a little bit. I'll take 3, 4 more hands, starting here, then Andrew, then at the back, and then at the back. That is 4. Then those who can speak, you are sure you're going to get a lot of time to speak in the afternoon and tomorrow. But we have to keep time because otherwise we eat into the time. So those 4, then what I'll do after that, I will ask the panelists, again, I'm changing my strategy. I won't call them one by one. I'll ask if any of them has anything to say. And then we can ask Peter to have the final word. Please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Prudence Rugendo. I'm working with SAGOT as policy specialist. I have 2 comments on the presenter. The presentation was very good, but one comment, I think, on the issue of local economic development, we have to factor in now the issue of climate change, because in the local arena, most of the people depend on economic activity like agriculture, and this is most affected by climate change. The second issue is on rural finance. I think it's also very important to talk about rural finance, because without capital, it is very difficult to do some economic activity. Thank you.
Professor Coulson.
All at Rapport for inviting me again to the workshop. It's very nice to come back to Tanzania. I would also like to thank Professor Norringer for his presentation. I found it very, very interesting. And the big question it leaves with me is this meant to be the whole of industrial strategy or only part of it? If it's only part of it, then what part should it be? And just to give you some illustrations of that, a few years ago, this keynote speaker here was Professor Justin Lin of, at that time, University of Beijing. And he was very quietly but very seriously advocating the Ethiopian model of development, which involves a garment industry exporting many of its garments, or most of its garments, paying very low wages indeed, which has been very big and he would say successful in Ethiopia. Could it happen here? Now that, in Professor Norringer's term, isn't the fourth industrial revolution, it's the first. And if Tanzania also develops the iron and steel industry from Nganga, that might be beginning of the second, but it's almost also in the first. It's very, Now, is this going to be the basis of industrialization, or is Tanzania going to say, no, we don't want to do this, we want to do something completely different? And I think that is the really big question, which we haven't really got to grips with in the discussion that's followed.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. My name is Pascal Assey. I'm a retired man. Let me just start by adding my voice on congratulating Rapport for picking this topic. It's a topic very dear to myself, and I really like it, because I think this is what is going to bring development. I have very few comments. The first comment is about the need to understand better the topic we are talking about. We need to have some level of clarity which will inform our strategies to achieve what we want to achieve. The clarity that we want to, I'm proposing, is clarity on the kind of people we are talking about. Are we talking about the individuals and in their families at the local level? Are we talking about institutions that facilitate households and individuals that live at the village, at the local level? Are we talking about leadership? The moment we break that down, we unpack those potentials, then we will definitely have some more clarity on the kind of strategies that could address the different levels that I'm talking about. If we're talking about individuals in their families, then the best strategy is actually mindset, creating awareness that they have the potential that they can use for development. And you need some kind of some types of institution that will bring that level of awareness to the individuals and to the families, that they have potential which can be used to transform their life. When you are talking about leadership, you need to look at the kind of leadership that will bring up those potentials from the individuals and from households. And the strategy there is a bit different also, because you are targeting leadership which will bring up the individual potentials that can bring the economic transformation that we are talking about. When you are talking about institutions, the strategy is also different. You need to come up with strategies which will bring up the institutions, efficient institutions that can facilitate the kind of support that the local people, individual households, and individuals can get so that they can develop their potential. So we need to unpack the topic to develop the level of clarity that will enable us to, or will inform our strategy that we are thinking about.
Thank you. There was a person there. Yeah. And I'm afraid that will be the last speaker.
My name is David Mhando. I'm from Sokoine University of Agriculture. I'm a researcher on coffee, livelihood of coffee farmers. And when Professor Peter presented about the fourth industrial revolution, I imagine how the situation is going to change on the life of coffee farmers. We found that about 15 years ago, result to the current advancement technology in the coffee industry, the price of Arabica coffee was higher than Robusta. And most of the farmers in Tanzania, for example, cultivate Arabica. But due to the fourth industrial revolution and the current change in the brewing technology in coffee, we found that the roasters, in order to maximize profit, they don't want to purchase Arabica. So they purchase a little of Arabica, and then they mix with Robusta and get the same quality. But we find ourselves that in most developing countries, we are still cultivating Robusta, Arabica, more of Arabica. So that's why I'm thinking about unpacking the potential. Despite the fact that there is advancements in roasting technology, and that most of the roasters would prefer to purchase less of Robusta less of Arabica than Robusta, still farmers who are cultivating Arabica, they can unpack a lot of potential. It is unfortunate that RC Mwandri is not among is RC of Tabora and not in the area where they are producing coffee. But at least he could even push it, how to assist the farmer to unpack their potential. That despite the fact that they are cultivating Arabica, still, when you cultivate good quality coffee, there is a lot of potentials. Thank you very much.
As I said, thank you very much. As I said, this for now will be the last contribution from the floor. I'd like to ask the panelists if any of them has something to say. And if so, I'll give them 1.5 minutes for those who want to say something before we reach a close, because we are close to 1, and we have to close in time so that we come back on time and finish in time. Do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to touch on 2 things which were raised by the DC from Pangani, Dada Zainab, and Dr. Kimei. Zainab talked about the youth involvement. And I would like to understand better, maybe we should look more into the kind of alignment we are having between what we are pushing in economic development and the level of skills we have with the youth. So the question of education, is our education geared towards preparing our youth to participate effectively in these economic activities? We've seen a trend of most polytechnics, most middle-level colleges transformed or upgrading to universities. So we have a big gap in between for people who are actually going to be even making use of the industries which are being pushed by the government or the country. Number 2, Dr. Kimei talked of, again, on economic activities, and they said, how do we bring in the private sector, the business? Which brings me to the question which has been discussed for quite some time here. The level of partnership between public and private sector. So how smart is the so-called smart partnership between private sector and the public sector? What is it that make it not work? Maybe Repoa going forward, we need to also look into that, because more and more concern are coming from the business community, the business sector, that we are kind of not very much at the driving seat. So what is wrong? From both sides, public and the private sector, maybe it's time we ask ourselves that question. So those are the 2 comments I want to make, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Maybe just a quick comment. I was not going to say anything, but I don't think I'll be around for the afternoon session. So If you allow me, there's a question which I happen to ask, if you could call a colleague, a mentor, of where do we go from here? And basically what he directed me to is, I don't know if anybody has read Alice in Wonderland. So there was a quite interesting story, between a conversation between Alice and the cat. So if I can just read, basically Alice asked, would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? Then the cat said, that depends a great deal on where you want to go, said the cat. Alice said, I don't know much and I don't care. Then the cat said, then it doesn't matter which way you ought to go. So not to continue further, but really what I wanted to say is that obviously we have spoken about a lot. We've spoken about industrialization and the importance of industrialization, it being the essential and central component of the National Building Project. And on the other side, we're talking about basically the role of the local government authorities and how you can tie all that in to bring about local economic development. So if you can just sort of unpack that, there is a lot to be said. The local government authority, when you're talking about decentralization, what does it mean? Basically, it now means it's more accountability and more responsibility to you to now come up and create your own revenue streams to be able to sustain yourselves and not really reach out to the, godfather back to the main government to be able to sustain you locally. And this ties in with what I'd spoken about. What are you doing in your communities to try and build the economic levels of your community? So maybe just those are my thoughts. You have to understand of where it is that you want to take your communities. So if you want better health care, if you want better education, and if you want water, but also as well, if you want to bring up the level of living of your people in your community, obviously that element has to also tie in to the bigger picture of the government, which is industrialization. The DC for Tabora was talking about having a lot of tomatoes and not knowing with what they'll do with the tomatoes. But if you have a factory in Tabora, you could just speak to somebody in Iringa. They have Dabanga there. They're making tomato paste. So it's industrialization, job creation. Your people will have work. At the same time, your farmers will have a place to go and sell their tomatoes. So if you look at the bigger picture of where the government is coming from, which is mainly the National Building Project, and you tie that in to what you want to do locally, there's your answer. But this needs to be unpacked, and that's where I think we'll know where we're going.
Thank you. I think I'm just going to add to what has already been said by my fellow panelists, but I think we had some very interesting contributions from the floor, and I'd really like to just touch on a question really maybe that Dr. Coulson has raised, because what does local economic development actually mean for Tanzania? So localizing the idea of local economic development, because we were talking about frugal innovation, which would really focus on the fourth industrial revolution. But is that relevant for Tanzania? When we hear contributions from the DC of Pangani, whereby there's some very basic challenges that they're faced with in that region. But the opportunities are vast. There's the natural resources available. But again, speaking to that mindset change, is Pangani ready for the fourth industrial revolution? Maybe, maybe not. So really understanding, because we can also take key learnings, right? So we heard from amazing things that are happening in Kigoma, bringing together the idea of PPPs, and it's working well, and there's some great results that are coming out of there. Why has Kigoma been able to do it and Pangani hasn't? So I think that's where we need to really break it down and start looking at that. And then maybe just on a final point, and I think just again adding to what the panel has already said, but the idea of providing the technical support, whether it's expertise, leadership skills within local government authorities. They're the ones who are best placed to understand what the opportunities are that are available within their own local areas, and to understand the specific challenges that they're facing, whether it's human resource, capacity building, skills development, financial resource. and to be able to plan strategically. So start working from an operational perspective, but really thinking long-term, and how does that fall under the national development goals as well. So with those few points, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for great contributions. For me, my take home again is that because as Mwalimu Nyerere said, development is for the people. So, and the people have to be as to their environment. I'll just give you an example. As I said, our region is bordering as many countries, which is an opportunity and sometimes a constraint. But you'll find that probably some of our policies are not taking cognizance of that kind of a fact. You find somebody sits in Dodoma, I was sitting there just recently, without knowing the context of people who are living around the border, Mtukura, Kabanga, Murongo, or whatever. And this applies to Nduma and everywhere. So if you don't give a priority of cross-border opportunity, like for those people around there, you are making them poor, and you find in some evidence-based, you find you go almost across all borders of Tanzania. The other side is grammaring, is quite good. On a Tanzanian side, usually, I think this applies to almost all borders. So you can see that we need to really understand every community has different needs. Otherwise, the opportunities which are brought up by the cross-border trade, if they're not given specific local context and you maybe adjust the policies, you find those opportunities are just lost like that one. I'd like to talk about there was the question from Carlson. I think these industrial stages, maybe they're not conflicting, they can coexist. You'd find, like on Sunday, I was lucky to be in Nicaragua, and we went to visit one youth business. These guys are already in a gig economy. They've started a restaurant, and they're taking orders to people who are in the offices through the SMS, WhatsApp, whatever, and they're delivering the food in the offices. So whereas some of the technologies would be the first industrial revolution are just around there, but there's some of the technologies which are being used by the youth, they're already almost in the fourth generation. So probably, maybe according to the context, I should think, I know this question was to the professor here, but maybe in the local context here, I can see that we have some of the circumstances where leapfrogging. We don't have to care about the legacies, but we can take the example of, like here in the mobile phones. I can tell you, many people in Tanzania never touched an old phone. They simply jumped straight to the mobile. And there are some people who never used even those feature phones. They have gone straight to the smartphone. So sometimes maybe these may not be contradicting. But two things which I can just comment quickly. I think as far as the local communities are concerned, for the development to take place, we need to really see on what can enhance their productivity. We know for sure there's no any society which has ever developed without increasing productivity. And that one is a big challenge. You find that without increasing productivity, our farmers will always be complaining of low prices because they might be using a lot of energy and a lot of input, producing less and less output, and when the prices go down, and we know in agriculture, when everybody harvests on the same time, the price will always go down. That is a law of nature. But for those who have maybe, like, instead of harvesting 10 bags, they have harvested maybe 30. They can still get some profit if they sell at that market price at that time. But if we are not really serious with increasing the productivity and making sure whatever we are doing, we are enhancing the productivity, otherwise there's no way we can get out of the poverty trap, because the population is increasing rapidly. For those who didn't know, there's some statistics which shows that at the turn of this century, Tanzania will be number 6 or 8 in the world in terms of population, 308 or something like that one. And Tanzania is going to cross the mark of 100 million people just in our lifetime, just in 20 years probably, will be 100. So if we are not increasing our productivity, I think probably sometimes when we think so much about it, the future seems to be a bit scary for those who will be around. Finally, I would like to think that development is a complete package. There's no way you can just send one innovation or just one initiative and forget about the last one. We have to acknowledge that we still have financial illiteracy amongst even ourselves. And the development over the world have shown that unless somebody is financial literate, now we are talking about frugal innovation. I think with sound financial literacy, for financial knowledge, even the small amount of money somebody has can be able to multiply it. So I think for us, we need to take the development issues as a package and make sure the financial part, the financial knowledge part is not left behind. We need to be talking about prosperity, on how people can really get more rich, more wealth. Otherwise, the language of poverty, to me, I think is a bit negative. But if you talk about increasing wealth, increasing richness, I think it sounds more good than probably the local economic development is about enhancing prosperity, enhancing wealth of the local communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Professor Horinga, I would like to suggest one thing. I make a short summary, and then you make the final statement, and then we hand over to the organizers. If that's okay, then I'd like, number one, to thank everybody for the contributions that you've made. It has been a very enriching experience sharing session. I would like to apologize for those who couldn't get the opportunity to speak, or those who, when they were speaking, I intervened and stopped them, but it's in the interest of time. I would like to just highlight, and I think it's my task that I should highlight the words, the key words. I'm not going to give a summary. The key words which I'd like us to take home, which I think transpired from the discussion. Number one, incentives. It was stated that without incentives from the grassroots, from private sector to innovators, not much will be done. Second, integration. Integrating the private sector, integrating the informal sector, integrating the youth. That is a key word we should take home. Third is institutionalization. Institutionalization of change, institutionalization of policy reform, institutionalization of decentralized decision-making. If there is no institutionalization, if everything is personalized, not much will be able to move. Number four is experiential learning. That as we go, what I said, as we go global and local, we should encourage learning from below, and learning from the top. We can't go local by ignoring the global. Number five is research utilization. I think you heard it from two main speakers. A lot of research is done, it is kept on the shelves, but also developing capacity for research uptake. Because it's not easy for policymakers unless they have capacity and skills and they are equipped to use research, and they are given time and support to use research, they cannot use research. So we have to create conducive conditions for research utilization, not only through dissemination, but by research uptake. Number six is affordability of technology, that it must be affordable, it must be available, and it must be easily accessible. Number seven is relevance. Any change at the local level has to be relevant. Any irrelevant change will be, you will be smiling in the dark. Nobody will notice. Number 8 is capacity. We talked about capacity, incapacitating communities, incapacitating entrepreneurs, incapacitating leaders. And all of you have spoken about leaders' capacity to lead, to understand, to lead the path to innovation. Number 9 was knowledgeability. That if you put anything on the ground in the local and you don't have knowledgeable groups, you have not empowered people to share the knowledge, transfer it and use it to transform, that knowledge will be there without any use. Number 10 is equity. And here it is tied to equity in terms of distribution, but also gender equity in terms of ownership of resources. And I think the last thing which I wanted to point out, which was noted by many, is the tools. What are the tools? Some people said PPPs. Yeah, how smart are they? How much, how is the partner, what is the component of the partnership in these partnerships? And the allocative efficiency, and finally, the knowledge, rural finance, capacity to utilize financial opportunities, but capacity also to foresee opportunities and utilize them. Those are the keywords which I request that we take home. And again, apologies for having overshot the time, but there was no harm in allowing as many people to share their experiences with you. I hope the politicians and political leaders here with us will be able to stay longer in the afternoon and even tomorrow be with us and you share experiences. I would like now to call upon Professor Noringer to give his final quick, short statement on what where he thinks he would end. And after that, I would like to request Dr. Kirama to take over and guide us as to the next steps. Thanks very much, each and all.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Is this one? Yeah, thank you very much, Pascal. I have a dilemma now because there are so many good questions and critical comments and there's so much stuff that I would like to go into, and it would be another keynote lecture, at least. And I can see people getting hungry, tired, so I have to find a balance there. And I would say, please come and talk to me sometime over lunch, later today, tomorrow, with all these very important and interesting questions. And very briefly, there is one thing when it comes to all the comments around the fourth industrial revolution and whether or not a particular district is ready or Tanzania is ready. Nobody is ready for the fourth industrial revolution, but we all face it. And being ready is not a matter of 0 or 1. Some people are a bit more prepared than others. And like with earlier industrial revolutions, those who are a bit more prepared than others are more likely to benefit. And that would be my sort of perhaps closing statement. And next to inviting you all to come and talk to me about the very interesting points that you've raised, because I would very much like to discuss them in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our distinguished panel. Please, another round of applause. Professor Peter Noringer, Professor Pascal Mio, who moderated this very interesting reflections of the keynote address. Other members of the panel, Santina Benson, Dora Kyungu, Bakari Machumu, Professor Faustin Kamuzora. Thank you very much. And a round of applause for yourselves, for your participation and engagement, fruitful discussions from this morning during the opening remarks and address from the Vice President, as well as the keynote. We will now be breaking for lunch, but I have a few announcements. Lunch will be held in the main restaurant And then immediately after lunch, we hope around 2:15, we should be back, and then we'll break into parallel sessions. There will be 3 different sessions. One will be on pervasive informality and elusive jobs, challenges and implications for desired local economic development, which will be held in here, the main hall, Tembo. The second one is on spatial variations in resource endowments, and that will be held in Ngorongoro. It's in the hall, as soon as you get out of this main hall, on your right-hand side. And the third panel will be on intergovernmental relations and empowerment of local authorities for desired local economic development, and that will be upstairs in the Maasai Hall. We ask for all those that were provided with headsets for translations to just leave them on your seats. Also, after lunch and after the parallel sessions around 3:30, we will have poster presentations, and we request that everyone visits these poster presentations. It is a form of capacity building for up-and-coming researchers, and we request that you go and see those posters. There are many interesting researchers, and there should be many interesting discussions with the researchers there. And then after that, at 4 o'clock, there will be another thematic panel in here, in the main hall, Tembo, which will be looking into unlocking local economic development, enablers, constraints, and how to overcome them. So that will, after leaving the parallel sessions, we'll all come back in here at 4 o'clock, and thereafter we'll have a cocktail after that for everyone. In the meantime, as you walk out, everyone will be provided with a lunch coupon, and please make sure you get one as you head to the restaurant. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. I believe that's it. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
Summarizing so elegantly. I can actually sort of just say, okay, it's done.
I was telling you the wake up to